So we got this subwoofer installed in this F150, and as we expected, the customer decided he wanted a little bit more output and a little bit better sound quality. We've got the perfect solution. Ken, we got this Kicker KEY200.4 amplifier. Tell me what this is going to do for us and how you're going to put it in.
So this amplifier here is super small. As you can see, it's going to stash behind that factory head unit, and it will re-EQ the speakers that are in there. It'll also set time correction. It's basically going to make you feel like you're sitting at a concert. And of course, more power than what that factory head unit can give out. Very cool piece.
So it's actually retune the speakers that are in there so you don't actually have to replace the speakers?
No, we're actually going to try it with the factory speakers. I bet you'll be amazed.
Oh, I'm sure I will be. It's pretty amazing technology, so stay tuned for the install.
So now that we have all the wiring completed inside the vehicle, it's time to set up the in panel of the Key amplifier. Let's go over some of these settings we have here. We do have a lot of dip switches, and I'll walk you through them. The first dip switch, all the way here on the left, is going to be the turn-on selection dip switch. So this is going to be where you're going to choose to use a traditional 12-volt remote turn-on lead like most amplifiers do, or if you're running speaker-level inputs into the amplifier, as we are in this install, you can utilize DC offset to turn the amplifier on and off. Since we're using speaker-level inputs, we're going to go ahead and utilize that feature by flipping the dip switch to the down position. The next dip switch is the fader dip switch. Now, what the fader dip switch does is it allows you to get 4 channels of audio output with only the front 2 channels of audio input. So you can just input channels into the front left and front right inputs of the amplifier, and you'll get audio out of all 4 outputs if you choose to have the fader set to the off position. We actually have 4 channels of audio in, we're getting 4 channels out, so there's no need to flip the dip switch. We're going to keep it in the default position, which is the on position. The third dip switch is the compressor dip switch. Now what that does is it limits distortion out of the amplifier to right at 1% THD. If you choose to have that dip switch in the off position, you can actually throttle up and have a little bit more distortion output, and that's really going to be personal taste. So get in there, listen to it. It comes defaulted in the off position. If you feel that you're getting distortion prematurely out of the amplifier, flip it to the on position, listen to it again, see how you like it. We're going to leave it in the off position. We'll listen to it later. The fourth dip switch is the bi-amp mode. Now this is a really cool feature of this amplifier. This allows you to bi-amp front speakers and get all the power of the Key amplifier just on the front stage of the car. You can put the front dash tweeters or full range speakers, maybe you have a 3-inch dash speaker, you can put those on the front 2 channels of the amplifier, and then those front door woofers on the rear 2 channels of the amplifier, and you have no crossovers in line. You let all the crossover work be done with the Key amplifier. It does all the work for you, and it's actually able to tell the difference between maybe a 1-inch tweeter and a 3-inch dash speaker and adjust the crossover accordingly. So let the Key work its magic. Just hook the tweeters up to those front 2 channels, the woofers on the rear 2 channels, let the Key do its work. And then the next dip switch is going to be Kicker EQ. Now what this does is it adds a little bit of bass and treble bump into the end result. You're going to start with a flat peak noise sound, and then the goal of the Key is to get a flat sound at the listener's ear. However, we find that sometimes that's a little boring. So we add a little bass and treble bump into that end result. If you don't like it, if you actually want just a flat response at the listener's ear, you can go ahead and defeat the Kicker EQ. We're going to go ahead and leave it on for this install. And then the next dip switch is time delay defeat. Now what that dip switch does is it defeats just the time delay portion of the Key's auto setup algorithm. If your vehicle came with a factory amplified system, maybe it has factory time correction from the factory. The Key cannot see that time correction. What it's going to do, it's going to stack additional correction on top of that and totally screw up your soundstage. So if you've ever run the auto setup process and you've gotten lackluster results in the soundstage department, that may be what's going on is you have factory time correction stacked on top of what the time correction the Key has done. So if you ever get that result, go ahead and flip that dip switch to the time delay defeat. Listen to it again, I bet that'll solve your problems. And then these last 2 dip switches, those 2 work together, and those are going to be your high pass filter selections. You can choose between 60 Hertz, 80 Hertz, and 120 Hertz, and then off. What that does is it filters out deep bass from those door speakers to help clean them up a little bit. If you have a factory subwoofer or obviously aftermarket subwoofers installed, I highly recommend you go ahead and flip the high pass filter on. So let's go ahead and we're going to set that to 80 Hertz, give it a listen, see how it sounds. Next up, I want to talk about this button right here. That's the radio detect button. That's going to be the dummy load that John and I previously discussed. In the 2016 F150 that we're installing, we do not have what we call a smart radio or a smart factory system. We do not need to utilize the dummy load. If you're installing in a Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, even some newer Chevys, there are more and more vehicles every day out there that require this switch to be engaged. Engaged would be this position here. This is the off position. We're going to leave it in this position here. And then we have the gain setting features, which we'll talk a little bit later on how to set gain. But I also wanted to talk about this port, and that's going to be the microphone port. So the microphone is included with the amplifier, plugs into that port obviously. And then this microphone here is what's going to do all the listening for it. This is going to go up on the driver's headrest, and to help it hold it in place, we include this rubber strap. So you simply slip it in one slot, through the next, and like so. So now drape this over that driver's headrest, which would be right at where the listener's ears would be, right? So this rubber strap just helps hold that microphone in place while it's doing its measurements. So go ahead and pop that up on the driver's headrest, and then you're going to need to play a source of pink noise through your source unit. You can download pink noise from Kicker.com under the test tone selection, and you can download a 20-minute track of it, play that through your factory source volume at about above conversational level, maybe 2/3 volume, more or less. Just make sure it's nice and loud so the microphone can hear it, and you're good to go. So now it's time to do the auto setup process of the Key 200.4 amplifier. In order to do that, you're going to need something called pink noise. What that is a signal that's equal amplitude at all frequencies. And you can download that from Kicker.com. Save that on a USB drive, put that in, burn that on a CD, or play it via aux. We do recommend you don't try and stream it over Bluetooth or any type of online streaming service or anything like that. So save it to a USB device as we're using in this particular source. So pink noise is a known flat signal. Again, it's equal amplitude at all frequencies. So that's going to play through the factory head unit. It's going to play through those speakers. And of course, goal is to get a flat sound at the driver's ears. So we're starting with a known flat signal. The key is going to make corrections to make sure it sounds flat still at the driver's ears. That's kind of one of the magics that the key does. And second thing it does is set time correction. So we have different distances from the listener's ear, from the driver's door speaker, from the passenger door speaker, rear speakers, etc. So it's going to set all that stuff up for you. There's a couple of notes I need to make you aware of also. Any speaker that's not connected to the key amplifier, in this truck, we have a center speaker. So any speaker that's not connected to the key needs to remain quiet. So you're going to go ahead and unplug a center speaker. If you have factory or aftermarket subwoofers, you're going to want to make sure that those are unplugged. And if you had to take a panel apart like we did, make sure that you go ahead and pop it back in place before you start the process to make sure that the cabin is acoustically the same when it's all said and done. So go ahead and put the dash back together, etc. We recommend that you run the mic cable either out of the passenger or driver footwell, and then when you're done with the microphone, you can just reach up under there and unplug it from the amp and you're good to go. Now, we have the microphone in place on the driver's headrest, and in order to start the auto setup process, you just need to hit this button one time. Once you hit it, you'll hear a series of beeps. You have 10 seconds before the auto setup process starts. So you want to make sure you're in a quiet environment, roll the windows up on the truck, make sure that there's not an air compressor or something else running in the room. Don't have the truck running either, so keep your car not running, and then the AC off, things like that. Turn the volume up to roughly half, above conversational level, and then hit the button, exit the vehicle, close the doors, and you're good to go.
Well, Ken, I walked past a minute ago and I heard was happy tones. So what does that mean?
The happy tones, the little shave and a haircut style tones, means that the auto setup algorithm did complete properly. So you can hop in, you're going to press the button one more time to exit that setup process, turn the volume down, because you remember you had pink noise playing reasonably loud. So turn the volume down, hit the button one time to exit the setup process, and that's it. You're all said and done. So go ahead and put in your favorite song, listen to it, see how it sounds. The part I like the best is that this button now becomes a demo button. So you go ahead and you play your favorite song in that track, you're going to hit the button. One low tone like that means all the setup process, all that DSP stuff is turned off. Press it again and you'll hear those two higher beeps. That means all the auto setup process stuff is on.
Nice.
So go ahead and listen to whatever your favorite track is, toggle back and forth, listen to the before and after the changes that it made. So that's a really good way to showcase the DSP possibilities of it.
What if you don't like the way it sounds? What if it just doesn't sound quite right? What do you do then?
You can obviously rerun it. So you're going to press and hold the button for 10 seconds. And I warn you, it's 10 full seconds. It does feel like an eternity. Press and hold that button for a long time. You'll hear one low, long tone. That means the DSP is erased, and you can go ahead and just set it up as if it were new. So you just tap the button one more time. It'll restart the auto setup process. Maybe adjust the mic positioning a little bit. And the owner's manual would recommend that the mic points straight up towards the headliner. We have had some success with adjusting it maybe more diagonal or even facing forward. And again, it's all personal taste. So what sounds great to one person may not sound great to the next. You can play with it a little bit, but generally 90+% of the time it's one and done.
Yeah, I think so. What if you don't get the happy tones? Then what do you do?
So instead of the happy tones, you hear it kind of do 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 do, maybe like you've lost a life or you died in a video game.
Descending tones.
Yeah, exactly. Descending tones like that, kind of unhappy tones. After the unhappy tones play, you'll hear a series of beeps. Count them. You hear a series of beeps, maybe 1 beep, maybe 4 beeps, maybe 6 beeps. Count the number of beeps, reference that in the owner's manual, and it'll tell you what the problem was. Maybe your pink noise wasn't loud enough. Maybe you had one of the dip switches wrong on the amp, etc.
Sounds like it's smarter than I am. Sounds like you can't screw it up.
It is pretty darn smart.
Well, I think probably the next thing we need to do is possibly let the customer listen to it. Are there any other adjustments or anything else the customer can do or anything we can adjust from this point?
Sure. So, color it to personal taste, right? So once the amp sounds more or less the way you want it, and of course each track that you play may sound a little bit different, you can use the sound shaping features that are built into the head unit. We do recommend that you don't use ones that involve time correction, so where like seat placement or something like that. But if you want to add a little more treble in it, go ahead, just do it. I mean, it's your truck, right? One last thing we did note, we did disconnect the center channel speaker for this particular truck. So if you do have any speakers disconnected, whether it's a center channel, subwoofers, factory or aftermarket, go ahead and plug those back in, listen to it, see how it sounds. But yeah, like you said, we're all set here. We're ready to rock and roll. Let's get this back to the owner.
Sounds good. Let's bring him in and let him enjoy his music.
Sounds great.